Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Fine, I'm going to start immediately. Now, this lesson is going to cut off in 40 minutes. If we did not finish, we will take a 10-minute break and then we'll go back. Okay? But we might finish in 40 minutes. So I'll share my screen. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Fine. We are going to finish lesson 19, which is a very, very easy lesson. It talks about the environment. This is the core. And tomorrow we'll finish lesson 20. Again, we will be doing the core online. So that lesson is organisms and their environment. It talks about ecology. And it talks about how organisms are related to their environment. It's really, really easy and really interesting. We will start with basic definitions. The first definition is the definition of ecology, which is studying your environment. It is the study of how organisms interact or live with each other and their environment. Another definition is the definition of ecosystem. Here we have a community of organisms, a group of organisms, and their non-living environment. The non-living environment here, they mean the sun, the sea, the wind, all the organisms together with their non-living environment. Now, I'm sure you know this from before, that the sun is the main source of energy to any ecosystem. And the sun provides us with two sorts of energy. Heat energy, it makes our earth very warm, and it gives us light energy. Now, why is the light very important and it is the main source of energy? Because plants use this light energy in photosynthesis to convert the light energy into chemical energy. And I also know that you know this from before, and you know the balanced chemical equation. So this is basic ecology that we are going to study, that the sun is the main source of energy. It gives us light energy. It gives us warmth or heat energy. Plants convert this light energy and convert it to chemical energy in photosynthesis when they make their own food. Okay, you need to know some terms. What is organic matter? Organic matter is the carbon and the nitrogen and the proteins found in your bodies and the bodies of any living organism. When we die, we decompose, and this organic matter goes back to the earth. So when you die, God forbid, we decompose, and our organic matter, our meat, our flesh, our skin, our muscles, all these that contain carbon and nitrogen and proteins, they are decomposed. It goes back to the earth. And if we eat, when we eat, the energy will be recycled. Let's look at this part. Okay. Now, again, some basic definitions that I'm sure you heard about. Producers are organisms that make your own food. Is my voice clear? Herbivores, these are organisms that eat only plants, like a cow or a giraffe. Carnivore, these are organisms that eat only meat, like a lion or a tiger. Primary consumers. My voice is lagging. Is it better now? Hello? Better now? Okay. Primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. I'm going to explain. Hello? Can you hear me or you can't? Hello? Is this any better? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So my voice is lagging or it's fine? Okay, let me continue. I don't want to
It's
waste any
fine.
time. Fine. Now, primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer, I'm going to explain it when we explain the food chain. Decomposers, of course, these are organisms that feed on dead organic matter. And I want to emphasize on decomposers and decomposition, because respiration, we studied respiration in detail. Respiration is the breakdown of food to give you carbon dioxide and water. So respiration, this is the equation: glucose, C6H12O6 plus oxygen will give me carbon dioxide and water. You already know this from before. And this is the balanced chemical equation. Respiration is exactly the same as decomposition. The only difference is the type of food that is broken down. In respiration, the type of food that is broken down is glucose. Okay. In decomposition, it's the same equation. So decomposition is the same as respiration. The only difference is that the type of food that is broken down is dead organic matter, dead food. Okay, this is really important because a lot of questions will come on this part. We are talking about different terms in our ecology. Decomposers, these are organisms that feed on dead organic matter. How do they feed? They feed by respiration. Exactly, they break down the food like we break down the food. The only difference is the nature of the food. The food that is broken down is dead food. So respiration has the same equation as decomposition. So these terms, I think they're very easy, primary and secondary and tertiary consumers. We will discuss them when we talk about the food chain. Now, why do I have this picture? Because this rabbit eats only plants. This rabbit is a herbivore. And this lion eats only meat. So this lion is a carnivore. And we as humans, we eat both meat and both plants. We eat everything, meat and plants. So we are described as omnivores. Herbivore, the rabbit. Carnivore, the lion. And omnivore are the people or the organisms that eat both meat and plants. Very easy. Now, this picture is showing you decomposition in action. This is a dead fox. This fox, it will not lay there forever. With time, the fox will disappear because it will be decomposed. All the organic material in its body, in other words, the hair, the fur, the skin, the meat, all this has been decomposed and it went back to the earth, and the earth will reuse it again. The plants will reuse all the decomposed matter, and this is called recycling. This is recycling. In decomposition, we will recycle the organic matter, and this is one of the advantages of decomposition. Now, what are the microorganisms that help us in decomposition? Bacteria and fungi. Okay. Now, decomposition, we need to understand it. It is the breaking down of dead organic matter, just like the pictures you have here. Again, if you look at this picture from the beginning, this is a dead rat or a dead rabbit, and it will decompose. These are the stages of decomposition. After a minute, you'll find that it will completely disappear. All the organic matter and the body of this dead rat will go back to the earth. So this is an advantage. Decomposition is very important. It is done by bacteria and fungi. What are the advantages? This can be a question on its own. Decomposers help us get rid of dead organisms and return these nutrients, the organic matter in their bodies, return these nutrients back to the environment because they will be absorbed by the soil and reused by the plants for growth. So decomposition is very important. And who does the decomposition? Bacteria and fungi. And they do this by something called external digestion. And I think I explained that when we studied fungi. We said fungi are decomposers. They eat dead organic matter and they have lots of advantages because we get rid of the dead bodies, because the organic matter in the body of the dead organism goes back to the earth. It will be absorbed by the plants will reuse it, etc., etc. How do they digest dead organic matter? By external digestion. This has another name, saprophytic digestion. They release enzymes, they release digestive enzymes that will do the digestion outside the body, and then they absorbed the dissolved dead body by diffusion. How do we do digestion? External or internal? Do we have an external digestive system or our digestive system is internal?
Internal.
Internal.
Yes, these decomposers don't have a digestive system, so they do their digestion externally. Okay, now let's start a food chain. Very easy. You'll find that it's really easy. A food chain is a diagram like you see here in front of you, and it shows the feeding relationship between organisms and how the energy flows between one organism and the next. A food chain always starts with a producer, and then this producer is eaten by the primary consumer. So here we will introduce primary consumer, which is the first consumer in the food chain. Another name for primary consumer is the herbivore, which is the organism that feeds only on plants. This primary consumer will be eaten by the secondary consumer, and then the tertiary consumer, and so on. So this is the food chain. It's a chain or a diagram that shows you the feeding relationship, what organism is feeding on what, and the flow of energy. Now, this energy, as it moves from one organism to the next, this energy, 90% of this energy is lost. And I think you also heard about this before. This energy is used by the organism in movement, in respiration, in producing heat, in excretion. Not all of the organism is eaten by the other animal. Not all the organism is digested. So energy is lost as it moves along a food chain. But organic matter is recycled. I want you to focus on this sentence. Organic matter is recycled, while energy is lost along a food chain. What is organic matter? Organic matter is the carbon and the hydrogen and the nitrogen in our bodies. Organic matter is our skin and hair and flesh and meat. When we die, we are decomposed. And all these things are decomposed. They go back to the earth, and the plant will reabsorb it and use it for growth. So organic matter is recycled. Anything that dies will be decomposed, and its meat and flesh will be decomposed and go back to the earth. What about the energy? When the producers are eaten by the primary consumer will use this energy, will use some of it, will use most of it actually. It will use it for growth and reproduction and excretion and movement and producing heat. And then this primary consumer will be eaten by the secondary consumer. By the time the secondary consumer eats the primary consumer, a lot of energy would be lost to the environment. And the secondary consumer actually takes only 10% of this energy because 90% of the energy is lost. So I hope this sentence is very clear. Organic matter is recycled while energy is lost. It is lost to the environment in the form of heat. Again, this is another very simple food chain. We have the sun, which is the main source of energy on Earth. The sun gives us two sources of energy. It gives us light and it gives us heat. It keeps our Earth warm. The light is absorbed by the producer. It will change light energy into chemical energy in photosynthesis. This producer will be eaten by the primary consumer, which is the mouse. This mouse is going to lose a lot of the energy. It will move and reproduce and excrete, and then only 10% of the energy will be transferred to the secondary consumer, which is the owl, and so on. Easy? Okay, so we're talking about the level of consumers, and I think we already mentioned it. The first consumer is the herbivore. We first have a producer, and then the first consumer. Second consumer, third consumer, fourth consumer. Very, very easy. Second consumer is known as the secondary consumer. Third consumer in the food chain is known as the tertiary. Fourth consumer is known as the quaternary. The final consumer in a food chain is known as the top consumer. Okay, I see that things are very easy, but if any one of you has a question, please stop me. Now, this is a bigger food chain, more than one food chain together, and now they called it a food web. So what is a food web? This is when we put more than one food chain together, food chains interacting together. Food webs are very, very common on exams because they ask you about the interdependence of organisms. What does this mean? How does one organism depends on another organism? Let me give you an example. Let's say there was a disease that killed all the rabbits. How will this affect the fox? Can someone tell me, will the fox find more food or less food?
Less food.
Less food. The fox feeds on the rabbit and the frog and the mouse. Now the fox had 3 options. But now the fox will have 2 options. Will have to eat only frog and mouse because the rabbit is gone. So this is going to affect the food of the fox. But how will this affect the grass? There will be more grass or less grass?
More grass.
More grass. Yes, because now we have less rabbits and less rabbits are eating on the grass. So we will have more grass. So this food web, if especially you took the core last year, they always get you questions and they ask you, how does one organism affect the food chain or another organism? Let's say this earthworm is gone. This means that there will be less food for the frog and the mouse and the sparrow. They will have to look for other sources of food because a food web is always affected by even one population. If one population is affected, the whole food web is affected. And this is called interdependence, how one organism affects another organism. Okay? Now, another question also that is very common, which is the, we'll talk about it in a minute. Here, factors that affect food webs. overpredation or hunting, disease, pollution, the use of pesticides, lack of food or resources, immigration, and invasive species. In other words, we have a food web. This is the food web. Anything external coming from outside that will affect the population of one type of species is going to affect the whole food web. And what are the factors that can affect the population of, let's say, the rabbit? Disease. Let's say hunting. I am hunting lots of rabbits and I'm going to destroy my food web. Let's say the immigration of the rabbits. The rabbits, they found that the weather is not suitable for them, so they immigrate, they leave. Something very important that I want to mention is something called the invasive species. And this is clearly mentioned in your syllabus. What is the invasive species? From the name, this is a new species that is introduced to an ecosystem and it is not part of the ecosystem. Like I have a garden, this garden contains a certain number of populations and they're happy and they're stable, but I introduced a new species. This new species that is not related to the garden is known as the invasive species. Let's say I added this snake. Now, this invasive species always causes trouble. It is never going to provide any advantages. It will only cause trouble. Why? Think about it. If I introduce a new species to an ecosystem, this species will want food, will want space, will want a mate. It will always cause trouble. So it will always cause disturbance in the food web. Let's look at the definitions. Invasive species is a species that is not native or alien to the ecosystem. It's not part of the original ecosystem. It is introduced and it always causes harm. Why does it cause harm? Because this will lead to more competition. Because it can cause diseases. It can cause other organisms to become extinct because it will feed on other organisms in the garden and it can make them become extinct. It will consume resources like food and water, and it will cause a decrease in biodiversity. What does biodiversity mean? Because we will use this word a lot. Biodiversity means variation or no variation.
Variation.
Exactly. This new species, this snake, will eat the rabbits and the frogs and the plants. It will cause destruction. It can cause spread of disease. It will be a predator. And it doesn't have a natural predator. No one will attack the snake, but the snake will attack everything else. Okay. Now, trophic levels. Again, this is very easy and very important. I think I mentioned that organic matter is recycled, but energy is lost. This is very important. That's why it's in red and it's in bold. Now, trophic levels. Again, trophic levels, very easy to understand trophic levels when we understand these energy pyramid. This is an energy pyramid. An energy pyramid is a pyramid, as you can see, that shows you the flow of energy between organisms. Always at the base of the pyramid, we have the producers. And the producer, because it's the base of the pyramid, it's the first trophic level. So what is the trophic level? The trophic level is the level of the organism in a pyramid. That's it. And they don't ask you directly, by the way, for definitions. They can ask you, what is the organism in the third trophic level? What is the organism in the fourth trophic level? You will simply count. This is trophic level 1, trophic level 2, trophic level 3. So it's a very easy lesson. Just lots of definitions and lots of things to memorize. Good? So this is a pyramid showing you the flow of energy and that the energy is lost at every level because we said energy is lost or heat is lost by movement, by respiration, by reproduction, by feces, by cell division. Not all the organism is eaten. Not all the organism is digested. At any point when the organism die, it will become decomposed. Decomposition is the feeding on dead organic matter by bacteria, by fungi, and decomposition has lots of advantages that we mentioned. And now the trophic level is the level of the organism in a pyramid. So so this lesson is all about definitions and terms. I hope you understand all these words: herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, first trophic level, producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. These are just many, many terms that are really very easy. Okay, this is another pyramid that shows you that energy is lost. Only 10% of the energy will be available for the next organism. That's why sometimes a pyramid or a food chain can only have 5 animals or 6 animals, because by the 5th or the 6th animal, there is no energy to support another animal in the food chain. Energy is lost. Lots of energy is lost. 90% of the energy is lost as we go up the pyramid, and only 10% of the energy remains. Again, this is a pyramid. We have 3 pyramids that we will discuss in this lesson. These pyramids are diagrams that show the flow of energy between organisms. The first and the easiest pyramid is the energy pyramid. And from the name, it's a pyramid that shows you the flow of energy. We always have lots of energy at the base of the pyramid because the producers absorb the energy from the sun and no energy is wasted yet. And then as we move up the pyramid will narrow down, will become smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, why? Why does the pyramid narrow down? Who will tell me? Why is the pyramid wide at the base and then it's narrow as we move up the pyramid? Excuse me?
There's less energy.
Energy is lost.
Yes, exactly. This is the answer. Because energy is lost. 90%, nearly 90% of the energy is lost at every level. And this is not enough. Tell them it is lost in movement and heat and respiration and excretion and not complete digestion. You will get the 2 or the 3 marks. Very common question, very easy question. Now, this diagram is showing you how energy is lost. This cow is eating the producers. It's eating the plant. Okay, and then some of the energy is lost in excretion. Some of the energy is lost for growth. Some of the energy is lost as heat movement, and only 10% will be passed on. Okay, now this is the transfer of energy. We said it 100 times that energy is lost. Now I think you heard it so many times. Movement, respiration, excretion, waste products. Not all the energy is eaten. Not all the food is digested, etc. Now, this loss of energy is described as inefficient energy loss. So please use this term in all your answers. You will say that energy is lost. 90% of the energy is lost at every level. It is lost in X, Y, Z. And this is inefficient. This is not good. This is inefficient. Use this term. So based on that, I think this is also understood. Producer, primary consumer, secondary, tertiary. 90% of the energy is lost. And only 10% is passed on. Okay, even plants, not all the sun energy is absorbed by the plants. Some of the light is reflected from the leaves. Sometimes the light that will fall on the plant is not the correct wavelength, so the plant will not be able to absorb it. Sometimes the light will not pass through any chloroplasts. Sometimes the light does not even fall on the leaf. It can floor on the floor. It can hit the floor or not the leaf. So these look easy, but the problem is that this can come as a separate question. Why can plants lose energy, or why plants do not absorb all the sun energy? So this is the answer. Here, not all the heat that falls or not all the light energy that falls on the plant is absorbed. Some of it is reflected. Good. Now, based on the efficiency of energy transfer, they can ask you a question like this. Why is it if humans eat the wheat, there is much more energy available to them than if they eat the cow that eat the wheat? So they will give you these 2 food chains. The wheat is eaten by the cow, and then it is eaten by the human. This is inefficient. While when the wheat is eaten directly by the human, this is more efficient. Can you explain why? This is the question. Why, if the humans eat the wheat directly, there is much more energy available to them than if they eat the cows that eat the wheat? So which food chain is better?
Most energy is lost.
Yes, you all talked at the same time, but you all gave me the correct answer. Because energy is lost. Because when the cow eats the wheat, we have 90% of the energy lost here, and only 10% will be transferred. When the cow is eaten by the human, again, we have 90% of the energy is lost, and only 10% of the energy will be transferred. So if we use the first food chain, less energy will reach the human due to the inefficient flow of energy. But if we use food chain B, more energy will reach the human because this is a more efficient flow of energy. That's it. And you will mention the examples for where the energy is lost. So very easy. Just the word energy efficient and energy inefficient, okay? So eating plants directly makes you get more energy because less energy is lost as heat and respiration and all the other examples. Okay, we said this 10 times. I'm not saying it again. Good. Now we're done with that. Now the important part here are the different pyramids. We have the pyramid of energy, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of number. Pyramid of energy from the name. It's a pyramid that will show you the flow of energy at every food chain. This is the first trophic level, second trophic level, third trophic level, and the pyramid of energy, it is wide at the base and then it narrows down because energy is lost at every level. I said it 100 times and enough. We have a pyramid of number. Now the pyramid of number looks exactly like this. And this pyramid of number, from the name, it's a pyramid that shows you the number of organisms at every level, the number of organisms at every level. And the pyramid of number, it is used with a specific example, the example of the tree. We have one tree only, and this tree is feeding thousands of insects. Again, we have only one tree, and this tree is feeding thousands of insects. And these insects are feeding hundreds of birds. So if we will write or we will draw a pyramid of number that will reflect the number of organisms at every trophic level, let's do it together. I have only one tree. So I'm going to draw a narrow bar because this bar represents one tree. This tree is feeding thousands of insects, many insects. And these insects will feed a smaller number of birds and then a smaller number of, let's say, humans. So the pyramid of number, from the name, it's a pyramid that shows you the number of the organisms at every level. This pyramid of number is usually used for a specific example, which is the example of the tree. And as we did it here, this pyramid of number usually gives us an inverted pyramid because the first bar is usually very narrow because that first bar represents only one tree. So the pyramid of number is inverted. It's confusing. It's difficult to plot, and these are the disadvantages of the pyramid of number. It is narrow at the base because it represents only one tree, and then it will be wide and narrow down as normal. But why do we have the first base here very, very small? Because how many trees does it represent? Only, wake up with me, only what? Only one.
One.
So the pyramid of number, not always it is inverted, not always, but most of the time it is. And this is the disadvantage. And this is the question that they ask you. What are the disadvantages of the pyramid of number? It is usually inverted. It is confusing because it is narrow at the base and then it is like inverted. It's not a normal pyramid. It's confusing. It is misleading. It doesn't look like a normal pyramid and it is not easy to plot. The other pyramids are much easier. A pyramid of number is usually narrow at the base, representing a single tree. A pyramid of number can sometimes look like a normal pyramid, but most of the time it doesn't, and that is why it is usually avoided. Okay? Now, the last pyramid is called the pyramid. Yes, my dear.
Are we going to be asked to draw the example?
Yes, and I'll show you how. This one, you will be asked to draw the pyramid of biomass. We will discuss it right now. Now, pyramid of biomass. So I don't want you to forget, we had pyramid of energy. That is a traditional pyramid, wide at the base and the narrow. And the pyramid of energy shows you the levels of energy. We have the pyramid of number that is inverted because it usually represents one tree. And this pyramid will then be normal, but it starts with a narrow base because it represents one tree. And then the last pyramid is called the pyramid of biomass. From the name, pyramid of biomass is a pyramid that represents the mass, the total mass of the organisms that are living or that had just died. The pyramid of biomass is a traditional pyramid. It is wide at the base and then it narrows down because the total mass of the organism decreases as we move up the food chain. Now, just like you said, we need to be able to plot a pyramid of biomass. It's very, very easy. Let's look here. We have the biomass of grass. We have 50 kilograms of grass and then 10 kilograms of... Hello? Are you with me? Now, if the Zoom cuts off, are you with me? The Zoom will cut off in 5 minutes. When it does, we'll take 10 minutes break and then we'll come back because I'll finish the lesson. We have 50 kilograms of grass and then 10 kilograms of grasshopper and then 2.5 kilograms of the frog. So as you can see, the biomass is decreasing. How do we plot that? And they do ask you. We will have a normal grid, like any grid. What will be plotted on the x-axis? The biomass. So I'm going to label it biomass in kilograms. Okay, and I'm going to do something just a little bit different from the normal graphs, that the x and the y-axes will be in the center of the graph. So what do? I'm going to still do the same thing and divide my graph into equal boxes of 5. Okay, and then I'm going to divide my graph in half. Let's see how many boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 20 boxes, obviously. So half of 20 is 10. So I'll go to the half of the graph and make a line. This line will be my y-axis. And this line also will be my x-axis. So my x-axis here will be 0, 0, 0, 0. Now, how do we plot that? Very easy. Let's look at the grass. The grass is 50 kilograms. What is half of 50? What is half of 50? Are you with me?
25.
Very good, 25, 25. So the 0 will be in the middle, and I'll take 25 on the right of the 0 and 25 on the left of the 0, like this. Where is it? Here. Okay, now this is another example. This is this example. The producer here is 80. So this is 40 and 40. I'll go to my graph. I'll go to my 0, 40 on the left of the line or the y-axis and 40 on the right of the line. Let's go to the next organism. The snail has a biomass of 30. So this is 15 and 15. I'll go to my graph. So I'll go to my central 0 and 15 to the right of the 0 and 15 to the left of the 0. I'll go to my thrush. Here, a biomass of 10, so 5 and 5. Sparrow, biomass of 2, so 1 and 1. So this is how we plot a graph of biomass. Again, we have a normal grid, like any grid. We will be given a grid on the exam. Again, we will divide our grid into equal boxes of 5, but my x-axis will be in the center. So the 0 will be in the center. And I will divide my values equally on either side of the 0. Okay? Here, in our example, the clover is 80. So I want 40 on either side, at least 40, and I should use more than half of the graph. So let's say this is 10, 20, 30, 40. Very good. 10, 20, 30, 40. Now, what about my y-axis? How do I label it? I write the name of the organism on the bars of the y-axis, and these bars should be fused, they're touching, and I have to use also more than half the grid. And we will practice doing that. You will realize how easy it is. Okay.